Welcome to the FIsionaries Podcast, sponsored by Alchemy. I'm your host, Jim Marous. The FIsionaries Podcast shines a light on the financial institutions at the cutting edge of digital transformation, providing with the tips and tricks to elevate your digital game no matter what size your organization is. Today, we're honored to have Dave Gorham, Vice President of Digital Solutions, Rebecca Forsberg, Director of Enterprise Application Support, and Salinna, Director of Digital Product Operations at Apple Federal Credit Union. They share how a clear focus, incremental implementation, and a strong partnership with third-party solution providers is essential for a successful digital banking transformation. They also share how member feedback to build an innovation roadmap and continuously monitoring the effectiveness of changes implemented limits missteps along the transformation journey. Digital transformation differs at every organization. The vision of where an organization wants to end up is different at every organization, as is the speed of the process and what every organization focuses on. We're really lucky today to have people from Apple Federal Credit Union on the FIsionaries Podcast. So when we talk about digital transformation, we really have an organization that has to work together. We have three people on today. So I'm going to start, Dave, with you. Dave Gorham. He's a VP of Digital Solutions for Apple Federal Credit Union. Dave, can you give a little background of yourself and also a little bit about Apple Federal Credit Union, and then we'll get on to the other two guests on today's podcast.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm VP of Digital Solutions at Apple Federal. I have been with the company for 22 years. I think I'm counting this correctly. So Apple Federal, just give you a quick history, started in 1956, been around initially to serve teachers and was pretty much exclusive to the education community for the bulk of its existence. Up until around 10, 15 years ago, we started to lean more towards community. Since we've leaned towards community, our membership has ballooned, our asset size has grown pretty significantly in that time. When I started, I think we were 400 million. We're darn near 5 billion at this point. So a significant increase in size. And our techniques, tools, all of that has updated and become more modernized. But what brought us here today was the digital transformation that we've gone through.
So we also have Rebecca. Rebecca, you're Director of Enterprise Application Support. What does that entail, and what's your career look like?
Thank you, Jim. So in my current role as the Director of Enterprise Application Support, currently I oversee technical support, QA, release management, and incident management for our enterprise applications, which include our Alchemy digital banking, our core banking system, as well as our digital account opening and membership opening application.
And Salinna, you're Director of Digital Product Operations. Can you tell a little bit about what your background is, but also about what your role is at Apple?
Sure. So I handle the front-facing side. So we handle the operations portion where we troubleshoot for frontline as well as anybody internally, and then we triage it over to Rebecca's team. We also handle the product side, so we help strategize our roadmap of what we want to plan to do internally on the digital aspect of it. So that's what my two teams that I oversee.
So Dave, getting back to you, a little bit about the strategic vision. You've been with the organization for quite some time, and to get any transformation process started, you have to get an idea as to what you're trying to achieve. So can you talk a little bit about your overall strategic vision, how far back it was, and what elements you thought initially would this entail?
So over the years, I've had a number of roles at Apple, right? I didn't start off just in digital. I've had a number of roles leading up to that. But it was probably 5 to 7 years ago, I started to notice, even though I wasn't involved with digital at the time, that there was definitely a need for digital. We were seeing our transaction volume start to slowly migrate from branch to a digital channel. Our digital online account opening started to become a little bit more robust. And what I did also notice is that our leadership was leaning very much somewhat at that time towards digital self-service, a way to more embrace the member, meet them where they are on their couch, for example. So over that, if I was to go back 7 years, since 7-8 years ago, and I'm throwing a dart at a timeline, but it's about that long. As we moved forward over the last 2-3 years, we did definitely see a change in the strategy. We started to get a lot more feedback that digital was the future. We saw more robust movement of transaction volume, of course, moving from branches to online. Our online account opening system we had to swap it out because it needed to be more robust to assist. But our leadership saw the potential there, and they were looking forward as to what the business would look like 5 to 10 years from now, probably. So as we were leaning into digital within the last couple years, we saw that leadership was looking for a robust digital strategy, and that's kind of where I entered the picture with a transition from one job role to VP of Digital Solutions. And working with Rebecca and Salinna and a number of others throughout the company, we came up with a strategy. And leadership was very accommodating to that strategy. We didn't have one before. We presented our findings to our executive leadership team, and in our ELT fashion, they were all for it at that time. So although it had some nuances that needed to be worked out, our leadership team really is the one that got behind it and pushed it.
Dave, just to follow up on that, were you consider that your organization was playing more of a catch-up role, or was it really looking at the future and trying to I wouldn't say leap ahead, but was the vision more beyond where you are to that point?
Yeah, I think there was two things at play. One, where did we want to get to? And where were we at that moment in time, and what needed to be done to catch us up in some ways? So we had switched from WRG to Alchemy, and in that transition went reasonably smoothly, and Salinna and Rebecca can tell you more about that. But it opened up opportunities for us when we were on Alchemy to have a lot more self-service, a lot more integration partners than we had previously. But I would also say that we were probably a little bit behind. We needed to provide some stability to Alchemy. We needed to provide some stability to the business. We needed to get a lot more enrollment and transparency about digital's trajectory. And our leadership team helped us with that tremendously.
So, Rebecca, you're in charge of the back office of the applications. And when you're doing a transition, you're transitioning from legacy systems to modern digital systems. And we talk about this often on the podcast, where you can't make the front-facing part of a digital platform, the phone in many cases, work right unless you fix the back office. You have to look at that. What did you have to do from a technical standpoint and from a visionary standpoint and from a human resource standpoint to really transform the back office from an analog to a digital platform?
Yes. So before we could even get to technical, we have to really highlight some of the departmental structure changes that Dave was kind of alluding to. So in our legacy system, we were all in one department. So Salinna's team, my team, we were just one big happy family with the way we had projects, implementations, support, operations, but ultimately found that was not going to work for us. What we wanted to do was to pull out strategy and implementation from day-to-day operations. So that was one of the first moves we made. The thought process being there is that strategy we ultimately would suffer if day-to-day operations were in the same team, because if you have an incident or you have a problem, you're going to stop what you're doing and then go in to resolve that problem. So that was kind of the first change. We pulled out strategy and implementation, and those went to the IT department. Unfortunately, we found that also did not necessarily work, because when you pull out strategy implementation, directly from operations, the voice of the member is really what was a disconnect there. So ultimately, where we have landed, which seems to be working well for us, is so my area kept technical ownership, support, QA, release management. Product ownership, so Dave and Salinna are more closely aligned to the member. And then Salinna's operational team is our front line of support. So that is really what has helped us move the needle forward in our goal for digital transformation. from the more technical perspective, back to get to your original question, the items that we had to do were really look to what we wanted out of a new system. So really defining our requirements and capturing what was missing in our legacy system. So for us, that really included a plan to migrate from an on-prem infrastructure to a cloud-hosted infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
And then we also wanted robust fraud and security tools so that Alchemy was able to fight on our behalf in any type of incident.
When you look at what's going on right now, in the past, organizations would build from within in many cases, or they pick a core provider. When you're picking a new provider today, what role do they play in the innovation process? In other words, them bringing ideas to you as to where you need to go. And from your perspective, how do you integrate it so that your current team doesn't feel threatened in the back office as far as things that are going to be done differently? I mean, it's a different aspect to what's being done where you really have to deal with the human resources issues as well.
To your point, I find it as an advantage because then you can allow your team to work more efficiently because you are selecting a vendor who can then take some of those back operation challenges that we're having. On our legacy system, we were seeing a high amount of fraud. And then with our own infrastructure, it was our teams that had to be very reactionary and jump to the front lines to resolve these issues for us. Whereas now in the vendor selection process, we can make that a requirement that that is something we want the vendor to do on our behalf. And this transfer of this task ends up making us more efficient in the back office.
So, Salinna, we've talked about the back office. We've talked about the overall overarching structure of where you want to land. But it's interesting because Rebecca referenced it a bit saying, geez, we thought this would work really well. And then all of a sudden we realized that, geez, we have members to worry about. Not that was an aha moment, but it's some of these things, I talked about it at a previous podcast a few days ago that if you change the color of an aspect of the mobile banking app, people are going to they freak out. They overthink what's been changed, but people don't like change. They don't like it internally when you're changing their jobs. They don't like it externally with your customer care people that are front-facing. But at the end of the day, no matter if we talk about it all the time or we don't, it's the member that has to be satisfied. It's the member that's got to feel good about this. So as you started to do digital transformation, what were some of the early aspects with regard to member feedback about what they liked or didn't like, or even more importantly, what did you learn about how to communicate the new advancements to a member base that was used to, I'm going to go way back, maybe almost to Dave's time, updating passbooks?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially going through the changes. So like Rebecca said, we were one team. I actually been at Apple for quite some time as well, since I was 19. So I'm going to say my age in this podcast. So I started in frontline and then moved over to the e-services side. But it really, having one team was great because you do have a hone in on the member voice. We had the front-facing side, which I was a phone agent on the digital team, to be able to hear feedback real time of what people are experiencing with our digital platform. We had two digital platforms. I went through that change. We had DI into WRG and then into Alchemy. So it's different changes that we've made and different needs that come in. But the way we listened was more reactive rather than proactively listening. So especially when it came to issues. So we were more of an issue response team rather than proactively looking at the data, at what trends that we can see on the logs that we have control of to see what we need to change. With our membership base, luckily they've been very, very fluid with change. They like the change as long as we communicate it out. Very effectively, very timely. We always have a very good communication timeline to let our membership know that something's going to change. This can impact you, but the benefits of this change is going to help streamline, make it faster, easier for you. Going to Alchemy, we are now rapidly releasing smaller incremental items for our members, which is more valuable than doing a big release. That's what we've noticed, the change, and we've noticed it more effectively of people adopting to that type of change.
So one thing we've seen is that the fear of the employee, both on the front facing but also back office, where we all kind of put out of our mind the fact that every time we talk digital banking, new innovation, there's somebody out there that's feeling like this is my job at risk. Salinna, how do you work with your employees to make them realize that we're going to bring you along as well, that your job's not going to be at risk? It's going to change, as you can see from what's going on. You know, you just walk in a branch and see that the number of transactions being done in a branch is way, way down for the first time ever. I go back to the introduce ATMs, they'll get rid of transactions, introduce online banking, they'll get rid of transactions. All they did was add transactions. The reality is digital banking, the way people learn how to, especially since COVID, how to use their mobile device to do banking, has made it so we know that we're going to make some adjustments on the people side. How do you communicate at Apple? Because I think this is a very interesting aspect, especially for those organizations such as yours that is really moving forward quite quickly. How do you build that communication in that this is good news for everybody?
It's honestly transparency. As long as you're transparent with the employees, they are aware. Also, telling them the benefits of not just for our members, but for them. It makes their job easier. There are little things that you can save 5 minutes rather than taking 30 minutes to do a task that they need to do. So for us, it's been very, very effective as far as, okay, digital, we move very rapidly. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 days, but we can tell you what you can expect within the next 30 days, and this is what we know. So that type of communication now to the staff has been very, very effective, and it's different type of communications because you have your own department, you have external stakeholders that are different departments. So it's the same type of communication, but different type of wording that you want to make sure that you're hitting, just so they're aware. And it's more of the enrollment piece as well. You got to get them enrolled, excited about the change that's coming. And then they are more on board, especially when you embrace the feedback that comes back to you as well. A lot of people are very resilient when you say, hey, this is going to change, but I don't want any of your feedback at all. It's going to change no matter what. Yeah. So it's better to say, this is going to change, but what do you think about it? And people are a little bit more resilient to that, especially when it comes to rapid change like this. And our organization, it went from legacy to this digital transformation very quickly, and it's the quickest we've ever moved. So seeing that from the top down and seeing that support that you have from leadership also helps as well.
So Dave, from an overall planning process, obviously you've got to make a decision as to what implementations we do, how fast we go. You're getting feedback. You obviously made a change to Alchemy based on the ability to do new things. I mean, that's how everybody makes a decision. When you look back over the last, let's say, 2 years, what are some of the implementations you've put in place that you're pretty doggone proud of?
It was early 2023, late 2022. And to Salinna's point, we were actually starting to dive into member sentiment. We were picking up call volume. What was the call type? We have a tool called Operative Intelligence telling us the root cause analysis of the calls. And we kind of segmented the problems into about 5 or 6 general categories. The biggest one being payments. So let's take this one for a second because it was 21 to 25% of our call volume. It's still hovering around 25% of our call volume. But what we did is recognize the problem. And once we did that, we were able to go out and start sourcing vendors. Now, we attacked the problem a little different than we had in the past. We looked at it more from a platform view. What vendors can we put onto the same or similar platform that we've already got, instead of going direct with people who are not on a platform or don't have an integration? So the first way to get faster that we did was to do a vendor vetting process where we, as digital, working with IT and EAS, we vetted a number of vendors before we even put them in front of the company. Second, we let the company have some input on which vendors that they preferred, which ones they liked, but we had some criteria as to what vendor to select. So we had, and I could get into the nomenclature of it, but does it meet a certain amount of our requirement? Does it have an API, SDK? Those were our basic decision matrix. Then we were able to decide on a vendor and then put the vendor into a project. Before, we would have spent months in project deciding on the vendor. Instead, we eliminated the whole first step and we just had the project serve to deploy instead of select and deploy. And then the next thing was to continue to use member feedback this whole time. So we spent our first, I don't know, Salinna, probably 9 months of when I at least moved over to digital. All I was asking Salinna for was, where's our member sentiment? Where's our backlog? How many do we have? And what's our reach, impact, confidence, and effort for each of these things, which would give us eventually a score. But what we did is speed up. We were able to use that process to speed the business up. So we were able to communicate with open enrollment and transparency to everybody in the company. Here's what's coming, who's going to get on board, who's involved in the project. And the project went a little bit faster than it would have been a year previously. So we've done that now for probably 7 or 8 different deployments within the last year and a half. So speed was a factor.
So when you look at it, though, when you look at making these implementations, a lot of what you were doing was plugging holes, things that I'm making an assumption here, but plugging holes, fixing problems. But a lot of times members don't know what they don't know. They don't know that the world is trying to work towards a very fast new account opening experience, going towards a very fast digital loan application process, going towards a very integrated communication platform where you're going to get the same answer or a similar answer from any channel you go to, and the transfer of data, which even the biggest organization, I have a great story around Delta Airlines, which I won't say again, but basically every one of their channels worked very well, but they didn't talk to each other, which is all these aspects we have. You're obviously, as an organization, moving out of the plugging holes for the most part and moving towards the progression of doing things better as a digital organization, almost because it's also required. So it's, to a degree, plugging holes. What is an implementation you've done from a standpoint of really making digital better and making the member experience better that you're pretty doggone proud of, Dave?
I would say our current payments project. Now, not for a couple factors. One, we're moving very fast compared to the way we used to move. 2, we're probably going to solve up to 30% of the total call volume going into the MSC. I'm not saying we're going to solve every one of those calls, but we're going to definitely take some of that call volume away. Lastly, the member feedback and sentiment is slowly increasing. Our NPS has gone up because we've deployed a couple aspects of a payment solution. We've done RTP, Fed Now, Send, and Receive. We're also noticing our digital NPS.
Okay.
Yeah. That next up is, of course, what's called guest pay, and then enrolled web pay.
So you're as an organization, because you know what's going on around you, you're very advanced from the standpoint of, not many do receive and pay. I just, we do one only. And the reality of making the decision saying we're going to buy in to instant payments across the board hasn't been done by the biggest organizations in the world, let alone the smaller ones. And so, to your point, we're solving for a problem, but making advancements so the consumer, the member, really feels the benefits.
Yeah. So we're gauging everything on our NPS, right? If we make a change, does it impact our call center? Does it impact our front line? Do we have numbers to substantiate it? But also, what's our member telling us? Right? Are we reading their feedback? And we are now. We not that we haven't in the past, but this is part of our ritual. We read our member feedback every Friday is my day-to-day, as I like to call it, where I go through all of our NPS data, our feedback. I give that feedback to Salinna. That goes out to the team, so we know where we stand in relation to our member at that point.
So, Salinna, I use a good old baseball analogy here. The comment, "If you build it, they will come," doesn't necessarily work, whereby a lot of organizations do all this advancement, but they don't do a good job of either deploying it or letting the members or customers realize we have it. How have you communicated instant and immediate payments to your members so that they say, oh, wow, this is pretty doggone cool?
So the way we communicate it, it's actually, it's a little tactic. It helps with fraud as well. We like to launch first. It's a silent launch, or like a silent launch without marketing. And then 2 weeks later, we will utilize the tools that Alchemy has, like interstitial page, and then as well as email blast. But it's a very tiered way of structuring it, where we let our members know, and it's a consistent message, say, hey, we have this, we'd like for you to try this out. And then after the fact, we will survey our members to see if they're actually utilizing it and get feedbacks from there. So the tools that Alchemy really gave us really helped us communicate it out more effectively, and you have control of where to place those communication. I always think, because we are a digital team, we're very technical, it's very hard to communicate technical language out to people who don't know. So I try to utilize screenshots as much as possible, really try to keep it a brief message, but a very impactful brief message for our members. So,
well, and it's interesting because you can talk about the benefits of instant payments. There are so many of them. As you said, you can't really go overboard on talking about fraud, because that opens up new questions you don't want. But the reality is, it's all good for the consumer, and it's different than your competitors. So, Rebecca, from the back office perspective, and I may be oversimplifying the dynamics between the three of you. As far as Dave, I'm looking at you as the overarching view of the digital progress of what you're going to do. Rebecca, I'm viewing you as the back office person. And Salinna, while you're back office and front office, you're getting the earful from both sides on how are we doing from the member standpoint. But Rebecca, with all this change happening so fast, how does your part of the organization, the people that actually have to make the bits and bots and everything else work, and the technology really implement strongly, how do you keep pace with the change that's being driven by Dave and those guys?
Well, one of the things that we like to do is to try and make complicated processes as simple as possible. So that makes our team more effective. So we consider these our transition to operational support type tasks. So we leverage a lot of documentation, solution articles, know our escalation paths in all kinds of scenarios, so that we are well abreast to tackle the support element. We also, I like to call our teams, we're not partners, we're allies. We work so closely together that we share knowledge back and forth, which makes us a very successful partnership here. So when we have the opportunity to learn something more about supporting these new tools, we share that knowledge with Salinna's team so that they can pass it on to the membership and are easily able to solve problems before they even get to us. So this partnership really helps us support the fast pace of new features, new functionality.
You know, it's interesting. Alchemy's been very proactive in providing us guests or organizations that have done digital transformation. And more and more, we're getting these organizations where we have 2 or 3 people on the podcast. And I realize as I look at it, that's because the best transformation efforts have been teamwork situations. It's not Bob over here or Mary over here that have driven this whole process and they're top down. The reality is there's a tight-knit group that I'd hate to be the most senior part of any organization trying to go against them. You come together with what's obvious, a very strong measurement mentality, which I haven't seen at every organization in the business, where you do it all based on measurement and understanding feedback, which is really good in many ways, more than just NPS to really the call volume, which is interesting. So, you know, when we're looking at digital transformation, you have to have an eye on the future, what you need to do next. And I will get to Salinna on this because I know it's driven by the members. But I'll start with Salinna. Salinna, from the members' perspective, what is, if you were to rank the top 2 priorities as you go forward beyond the payments area, what would you say are 2 areas that you really like Apple to focus on? And I'll probably go with Dave and Rebecca to say, yeah, they're probably already doing it because nobody's silent in this trio. So What do you think is the thing that your members right now in the next year or so are going to want and you're going to have to answer to?
It's definitely the usability of just making things within 1 or 2, 3 clicks. And now the expectation now is literally like Amazon. We're trying to keep up with the Amazon expectation,
or Apple.
the other Apple,
where you get you get a credit card with basically 5 clicks. It's insane, but that whole DIY and very seamless, quick, easy experiences. So how do you doing? I mean, so the consumer's actually asking for this now?
They are. So especially when you have that casual conversation of, especially when it comes to navigation within the app, but we display so many different products. We're launching so many different things. Members are aware of it, but again, the expectation is to have it within 1 or 2 clicks. So it's now gathering that feedback of how we can manage and how we can proactively keep up with honestly the demand of our members. But we also want to make sure it's not just by a small segment of it. We want to quantify it to make sure it's effective and it rolls out to most of our users more effectively. So that's definitely our goal, is to get things a little bit easily accessible, but also just to capture the experience of our members, just to make sure we have that experience still within our mobile application. But the members, they can't tell if it's plugged into 15 different vendors behind the scenes. They just know that the interaction right there is the interaction I'm trying to do or accomplish. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, we're very lucky in the industry now that all these composable solutions, the Alchemies and other organizations that bring solutions to the table, really have worked very hard to be able to work with each other. In fact, you'll be quickly out of the loop if you say, well, we don't work well with XYZ company, and you go, well, guess what? We rely on XYZ, so you're out of the loop right there, and you're out of the mix. And everybody's gotten much better at that, but it certainly makes it so that innovation can happen at speed and scale, even at the smallest organization. You're nowhere near the smallest, but the reality is you're able to act as if you're the biggest organization in the marketplace in the way you can innovate. So, Dave, knowing that the members are asking for quick and easy, seamless solutions, as you look at your roadmap in the next year or two, what's on your roadmap to address what I'm going to call the member-driven innovation that you're looking at?
I'd like to call us a Finteraction company. So
there we go.
What that means is we hope to create as many opportunities for interactions within our app as possible. So we want our entire business to be represented in online banking and mobile. We want you to be able to go in and do transactions, get insurance, wealth management, see our commercial services, all within one experience. And by doing that, you create more opportunity for interactions. Each of these interactions keeps people in the environment more, transacting more with you, keeps them satisfied. So we've broken up our process into 4 phases. So sustainability, we needed to keep our app up, running, low error rate, higher NPS, and we have to maintain that. Second was optimization. So we have to digitize our back office to meet our front office expectations. Next was going to be predictive. We haven't quite gotten to that yet, but we're on our way with our data warehouse. And the last phase is embedded. So let me explain both. Predictive is the ability for us to present a next best action to our members. And embedded is, where do we embed our experience, or what experiences can we embed in ours so we create more interactions?
You know what? That's interesting. Not many people have brought that up as a goal, that I want more. I want more clicks. I want more fingerprints on our mobile app, because they want to be there. Because what you're playing against is Salinna's comment that says, I want the fewest number of clicks, but that's not what she meant. I want the highest interactions for the least amount of effort, which is so key here. Rebecca, how do you help solve for that, not just with one vendor, but with all your partnership organizations? Because if I'm not mistaken, what you do and your teams do, you're the glue that's got to make these all work invisibly together so that it creates that really good interaction and engagement going forward. How do you bring your different partners together to build the best possible output?
Well, the way I see that we merge our teams is by tracking our uptime and availability and supporting a defect-free product for our membership. And so one of the things that we did on our side to support that was we actually implemented selenium testing. So we have scripted testing that takes place every 15 minutes that is running through various test cases so that we can get ahead of any time that there's any type of incident or outage to our membership. And this has allowed us to get ahead of any problems before a member actually reports it. And so we can get to a resolution quicker because the backbone of both of their responses is that the system has to be available to them for them to leverage these new features, functionalities, and interact with our app and experience.
It's interesting as we talk to different organizations, it is amazing how passion is ingrained within the people we talk to, how that drives the innovation, transformation, how while many organizations can be very threatened by the change that's before them, the best organizations find that as just fun and the best opportunity out there. From the discussions you've each given me, the key is get the basics right. I don't want anything that's going to negatively impact my members. Not that anybody ever looks for that, but it is the core of what you're talking about today. Second, have an organizational structure that basically buys in to the process of transformation and advancement in future view beyond our peers, both big and small, and resiliency. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing, as a summary a little bit, is that you're making your organization future ready, but resilient in a way that anything that would come up if I go back to the COVID days and talk about the COVID loans and everything else, where the COVID checks we heard on a Thursday, we had to implement on a Monday. You're more prepared today than you ever were before for something out of the ordinary to happen and how you can respond to that. So as a final question to each of you, what are you most excited about, Dave?
Well, I'm excited we've gotten to this point overall, and I have to give credit not only to our leadership team, it's the whole company, and that took a lot of effort to, number one, I think our leadership was already there. They saw where we needed to go. What they needed was someone to help and a department, an effort to help get us there, a roadmap to do so. But also it's about the rest of the company getting on board. I think more than ever before, I've seen the company come together. And when I first started 22 years ago, it was a lot of silos. Today, it's a farm. And there's a lot of people working at the same tasks, doing the same things, all under the same banner. And for the first time, I could say that we're pretty united in this front. The feedback we get from the internal, the employees, the internal environment is helpful. It's also positive. People like where we're going more than ever before. I get questions about where, what direction is digital going in, or even what roles are on the digital team. I hear that a lot. But most importantly, I got to give hats off to the whole company. Enrollment and transparency got us here. Our leadership has moved its decision making down a couple levels, and let's us couple levels below start making more profound decisions with a little bit more budget. We move faster, we deploy things, and we get better results.
It's interesting. I coined a phrase, embrace change, take risk, and disrupt yourself and your company. The embracing change is the hardest part because it's not normal. We don't like it. We don't like it as people. We don't like it as business people. It basically is, it's painful. But when you have an organization moving together, you have partners in that. It's like the difference between working on your own and working out in a gym. Sometimes that momentum of people around you really makes the whole process better. Rebecca, I'm going to flip it on you, unfortunately. I'm going to ask you, what's the biggest challenge today that you have from an internal perspective on moving forward in a way that you'd like to move forward? There's got to be some.
So for us, one of the biggest challenges that we have had on our team is really stems from some capacity challenges and not having solid release management plans from our infancy with Alchemy. But then what we've done to solve some of those challenges is we have leveraged some expertise from other industries to improve our practices. So I read the book Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. The author is a surgeon. So this is not FI, this is not software development, but what we seek to accomplish there was to take very complicated approaches and releases and dumb them down to checklists, right? So where the impact to us has been as we have made these releases more successful in the future and our projects more successful in the future because we have created very granular steps that have made us be able to accomplish a lot very easily.
That's a great comment. I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits by James Clear. Same type of thing, taking these things. And Dave brought up earlier, you're a major proponent of a lot of very fast incremental releases that don't disrupt the consumer, the member, and don't disrupt your internal team. So Salinna, I'm going to end up with you today, and I'm going to say, as you look forward, I would say since you're by role, if nothing else, the closest to the member, what are you going to promise them without promising them, but what are you going to be looking towards to make their lives better?
Well, I'm really looking towards to seeing the actual improvements of it because I know it is surveys are surveys. The members call in for unique cases, but I really want to see more of that proactive, like, oh my God, Apple is actually making improvements outside of those type of channels. So I really look forward to seeing that, like spreading word of mouth. They come in as well, or they call the call center, they chat with us. Just seeing that ad hoc type of comments really would help validate what we're doing. Yeah, on a trend base, we can see it, but I want to see it more from like a sentiment, like more sentiment from there.
That's a great comment because, again, getting back to that, if you build it where they come, the challenge is, just to give you a little bit of the pat on the back and a confidence builder, is that when you're moving so quickly and bringing so many great solutions to the marketplace, expectations increase as well. And they don't realize until they do that they can't get that everywhere. We talk about the 3 to 5 minute account opening. The reality is when you're the only person in the marketplace that's doing it, you're getting the benefits of a lot more account openings than you would have had otherwise. However, your customers don't know that they can't get it. Your members don't know that they can't get it everywhere. It's those people that come in that go, oh, wow, this really is special. All three of you, thank you so much. Thank you to Alchemy again for making this possible. You did not disappoint. You put me in a very good mood. It is exciting to see what can be done with teamwork, focus, enthusiasm, and truly the ability to say change is not bad. I like the fact that you're really driving it from the member basis. I know we all talk about that, but I don't think I've ever talked to an organization that really is building all innovations based on member feedback. And that's great because it gives you a roadmap. It gives you what you have to do. It also eventually gives you the checklist that says, hey, we did it. We did those things. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Thank you to Alchemy again for making this possible, and looking forward, we will be speaking to you all again.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to FIsionaries Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into all the tips and tricks you can use to elevate your digital game. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please share with others within your organization and outside your organization. Post it on social media or simply leave a thumbs up with a comment. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Haslage, and audio and video engineer, Chris Fafalius. I'm your host, Jim Marous. Until next time, remember, rather than chasing the next shiny object, build your digital transformation roadmap based on the needs of your members and customers.